2020, our first in-person meeting, I think, since March. It's been a while. August 10th. Oh my God, it is.
Really?
I get the date wrong. No wonder I didn't show up at the right meeting. August 10th, I apologize. We have a lot of questions to go through tonight, but the first thing we're going to do, and some introductions, but the first thing we're going to do is our Pledge of Allegiance. So if everybody can please rise. Where's the flag? Oh, there it is. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you, everybody. So to start off with, I want to explain the conditions for the in-person meeting tonight. We are still bound by the governor's executive orders limiting indoor meetings to 25 people or less. We have a significant amount of the administrators in the district here today to answer questions because the district's reopening plan is the main piece on the agenda. And having those voices of experience here will help tremendously answer a lot of questions. And we do have a lot of questions coming in from the audience of citizens. So as of right now, we are planning on being and conducting live meetings from here on out unless the health conditions change in the area. Second of all, let's go right to a good news thing. Eileen, where are you? There you go. Can't tell anybody who anybody is with the masks on. Graduation. Congratulations. I've heard nothing but good things. Tracy Sisti was our board rep who was there. If we can unmute Tracy so she can say a few words about this.
Hi, this is Tracy Sisti, board ed member, if everybody can hear me.
Yep.
I was there at graduation and massive hand clap, standing ovation. You guys did amazing. How well it was put together. The students seemed to really enjoy it, as well as the parents. I've actually talked to several parents that said they would do that again over what we usually do for graduation, even in positive circumstances. It was incredible. And the fireworks display after was amazing. Everybody was social distance. It was completely safe and everybody wore their masks. And I seriously, if people could watch it live or see it on YouTube, it was amazing. I can't talk enough about how well it was put together. So you guys did amazing.
Thank you very much, Tracy. Thank you. You might want it. You're going to get to come to the microphone. That's right. Otherwise, nobody can hear you.
Sorry, I know it's a little out of protocol, but I do want to publicly shout out Helen Jarito, my assistant, who really did the lion's share of a lot of the detail planning. I know we all had the ideas for it, but she really, we owe so much to her and all of her careful planning and just thoughtful detail and everything. So I'm glad it was well received and that we could do that for the class. They certainly deserved a win at that point.
Well, that's excellent. Please congratulate her. Thank her for us as well. I do realize how large of an undertaking something like that is and very much appreciated. And to echo Tracy's comment, I did think I saw something online that said, what do we need Welty Hall for? But I guess those are conversations for another day, somewhere in the future, down the road in the future. But it was great to kind of give them the send-off that we had been hoping to for quite a while. So back in March, when we decided to postpone things until August, turns out it was the right move after all. So very good, very good. Next up, we are a little short-handed today, although we now have 6 people with one on virtual meeting. But one of the reasons we're short-handed is that one of our members, Julia Dennis, today had her first baby. So I want to give congratulations to Julia, little baby boy. I guess everybody's fine. According to Brian, you said she was texting you 20 minutes after giving birth.
I don't know about 20 minutes. Shortly after.
She's probably sitting home watching us or in the hospital watching us on YouTube. But congratulations to Julia. We're glad that everything went really well. Next, let's talk about one of the main things today is about the reopening plan. And I want to clarify what the role of the Board of Education is. So we've had multiple conversations at the state level about what the role of the board is in this particular time that we've never seen. This is unprecedented. Quite frankly, I think we're in for probably the most complex year in the history of public education in a lot of ways. And there'll be a lot of challenges ahead of us, some that we see coming and some that we don't. The Board of Education, it is very clear coming down from the state that this is not something that we approve or vote for. We are here to support. We are here to echo the concerns or questions coming out of the community. And we are here to provide logistical or financial support for the plan that Brian and his team put together. But we will not be voting to approve a formal plan, just so everybody is aware on that. Last, before we get into our meeting, I want to introduce our newest member, who actually contacted me in the middle of August to say, I am your newest student representative, and I would like to be at the meeting tonight. So kudos to her. This is Lindsay Leary, who's joining us for the first time. And Ryan McGowan will hopefully be joining us after he gets out of work in an hour, but I'm not sure if that's going to work out or not. But Lindsay tells me that she had been interested for quite a while in getting involved in local politics, in being a representative for her class. And I told her that I think with all of the things that we've been talking about here in the reopening plan, having a student voice to bounce ideas off of, to hear questions from, is incredibly important. So I was thrilled that she was willing to be here tonight. And I've told her, feel free to speak up if she has anything she wants to add. Good or bad, just be honest. That's all we ask. All right, I think we're ready to actually dive into the agenda itself. Committee reports. I'm not sure that we had any committee meetings over the last 2 weeks. Matt, did F&O meet?
F&O did not meet.
No. Carrie, I don't think we had a curriculum meeting, and I know, well, actually, all three of the people. I don't know if Tracy can hear me. Tracy, did you have?
No, we did not. We did have a phone discussion on getting the social media up to date and everything, which we're working on this week, but other than that, no.
All right, thank you very much. So we'll move right into the correspondence from the board. Brian, do we have any correspondence tonight?
Yes, I have one correspondence. To the board. Dear Brian, Board of Education, thank you very much for a beautiful crystal bowl that I received as my retirement gift. I wish you the best of luck during this next difficult school year. Thanks again, Sharon Cornerview.
And that was it? You said just the one?
Just one.
All right. Well, we have plenty of questions as we move into the audience of citizens. So just so the audience knows, I had, I think, about 15 or 16 people email me, some of which had multiple questions in the one sheet, some of which are repetitive, but I don't want to edit people's questions, so I'll be reading what they've said. But I know for a fact, and I've talked to Brian, that some of the questions are going to be addressed in his discussion, his presentation a little bit later about the reopening plan. So some of them were actually kind of new, and I hadn't heard these before, so those might be ones that you might just answer, but others we may defer to a little later in the agenda when the whole conversation comes up. All right, first question is from Carmela Minier. I believe it's pronounced Minier. I apologize if I mispronounce anybody's names tonight. First up, got a couple of questions here. Since a normal graduation was not held, although it was not normal, it was different, graduation was not held, and the town opted to do a car graduation because of COVID concerns, that doesn't make me feel comfortable sending my child off to school in just a few weeks. Why hasn't our town made a decision yet when many surrounding districts have already decided and opted to do hybrid? This isn't leaving us with adequate timing to prepare if it would be in person. She then favors hybrid, and she said hybrid with live lessons will provide some sense of normalcy. So I don't know if you want to give just a brief overview on hybrid versus in person.
Sure. First, let me apologize about the timing. The governor made the announcement 2 weeks ago today regarding the requirement that all schools go back in live teaching, not hybrid. He then opened it up to districts to decide what plan worked best for them. We then needed some time to reevaluate our plan and decide what's best for the district. So in doing so, we have adjusted the hybrid plan for Berlin Public Schools, and I'll share more of that with you this evening. I will share with the board. Tomorrow, parents will be receiving a letter, including the updated plan and a quick survey where we'll ask if you intend to send your children to school or you'd like to educate them remotely. So I'm still giving parents the option.
Thank you. Carmela actually has a second follow-up question, although there are other hybrid questions that I'm going to read, but you may have just answered it. Her second question, and this is about busing and transportation. If there's an increase of parents opting not to use buses for transportation, do we know how that will affect the drop-off lines? Will there be scheduled times, and depending on how long it takes, will it cut into learning hours? And also the door-to-door entry in the morning, how can they properly social distance? I think that's going to depend on the schools, the actual school, but in terms of the buses, where are we?
So we've had discussions at each building looking at both the arrival and dismissal of school. which will be much different than it has in the past. We've also looked at the drop-off zones, knowing that potentially we could have more parents taking their children and picking up their children from school. The administrators are working out different plans that would hopefully eliminate any delay in starting school or, causing us to have to end school early. We are definitely aware of keeping as much time for education as possible, but we also are putting safety first.
Thank you. And before I get to the next question, I neglected to thank everybody for coming out tonight. I know this feels a little different for everybody as we're kind of adjusting to this, but thank you to all the audience full of administrators and to John Richards, our Board of Finance liaison, for coming out tonight, and to the fine young man up there doing our video presentation on our live broadcast. Thank you. Next question from Jody Wojas, I'm not sure which it is. It's connected to the last one. It seems as though many surrounding towns will be adopting a hybrid model, but hers is a specific question about elementary school. Why are we not considering a hybrid for the Berlin elementary schools? I would feel far more comfortable sending my children back to the classroom with smaller class sizes, at least to begin the year.
So when you look at our plan, the state plan, the reopening plan, it really talks about cohorting and social distancing being the main areas to focus on. And we really believe that at the elementary level, we're able to cohort students in a manner that there'll only be 2 cohorts in their day and potentially 1 cohort if a parent decides to transport their child. So we're able to take the students, which could be anywhere between 14 and probably 22 students in a class. We're able to take those students and have them together for the entire day and only with those students. We're not able to do that at the middle school and high school in the same manner to that degree. So for that reason, we're not looking at the hybrid model at the elementary level. We're looking at a full inclusion model or, of course, a remote model should parents feel uncomfortable.
Thank you. Next question. No. Okay. The next question is from Kimberly Bennett. I'm hearing that Berlin is now going into a 1 week in school, 1 week remote for all middle and high school students, which is actually the hybrid model that Brian is about to explain in more detail. I would like to know how it is expected that 6th and 7th graders who are 11 and 12 years old are expected to be home alone for a week at a time to complete and log into all the classes. I'm an educator in another school district who will be in school full time. Seeing as all districts have different plans, which aren't consistent, how is a young middle school child expected to have to do this? Is there something being discussed about other options?
We recognize that can pose an imposition to parents, and we apologize for that. But in the same vein, we're really looking at maximizing the education for the students, given the safety concerns that need to be in place, safety precautions. So doing so, we're allowing the students at the middle school and high school to be in class for a week straight for continuity. And then the other group, we break them in 2 groups, would then be virtual, the same system we have in front of you today, where they would come into the classroom and be seen and be part of the same class, the live instruction going on. One of the concerns with the distance learning last year is the lack of continuity, because students weren't able to be in the class and the connectivity to the students as well as connectivity to the teacher. Our current plan provides continuity and connectivity to the class while also providing safe distancing. And as I said, the imposition of home of who's watching the students at home and things, being that they're 6th graders, is something that parents are going to have to work with and figure out how to do that. We don't have the answer to that, but I know that other districts are providing 2 days in and then 2 days just with posting and without the live teaching. We really believe that this model with continuity of contact with the live teaching day to day allows us to educate the students as to the closest level as we did prior to having to have these types of precautions.
The next couple of questions are about transportation. I have a question for tonight's meeting regarding buses. What will the cleaning schedule look like for the buses? How will kids be seated? And will siblings sit together?
Okay, so students will have assigned seats on the bus. The assigned seats will be daily. This way there's continuity of students sitting in the same seats. We're also looking at how they get on the bus, meaning their location of getting on the bus relative to where they sit. So the first student that gets on might sit in the back so the students don't have to cross the other students. The buses will be cleaned. Our buses take 2 runs in the morning and 2 in the afternoon. So the first runs are the middle school and high school. those bus seats will be wiped down after the middle school and high school run, prior to picking up the elementary students. After they drop off the elementary students, the seats will be wiped down again. They'll then pick up the middle school and high school students. Seats will be wiped down again, and then they'll take the elementary students home, seats being wiped down at the end of the day. So when we start in the morning, they're fresh. So essentially, the seats are getting wiped down 4 times daily in between runs, and we will social distance the students as much as possible. The thing we don't know that we're going to ask in our survey that's going out on Tuesday is whether the students, who's taking the bus and who's not. If we can stagger them throughout the bus and get more social distancing, we'll do so to the greatest extent possible. We just don't know exactly the numbers yet.
Thank you. Actually, I neglected to say that question is from Julie Gadomski, and she has one other question at the end. Has any local pediatrician been consulted on thoughts for kids to return? So in other words, what medical healthcare professionals are we utilizing their expertise?
We've really worked with Charles Brown with the Central Connecticut Health District for guidance. We've also worked with Wendy Russo, who's Director of Nursing. She's in contact with our pediatrician for the town. So it's not that we've not worked with local pediatricians, though.
Next question is also about transportation. It's from John Frink. Have you considered extending the distance that kids can walk to school and maybe going back to crossing guards at major points? This might limit the numbers on the bus. I know kids from as far away as Overhill Drive walk to Willard every day, and it was a while ago, but just a thought.
We've not looked at increasing the routes. I think until we know the number of students and where we are on the buses, that might be something to look at a future time.
Yeah, I don't even know how we can figure out what the routes are going to be until we know who exactly is taking the buses as well.
Well, the stops are going to be the same stops as they've been, but it's just we don't know how many students will be getting on each stop and what the capacity will be on each bus yet, and we hope to have that by next week.
All right. Go ahead. Yes.
Sorry, if I may. I know I've had a couple of questions from the public related to this, and they're centered around the ability to change their mind on the busing. So some parents have indicated that maybe right now they want their kid to take the bus, but maybe they determine that they don't. Or more importantly, vice versa. If they choose not to take the bus now, are they losing a spot on a route, and how would they be able to get that back if their situations were to change?
So I can answer that, Tim. So as far as the busing, even if you fill out the form that you're waiving the transportation, if you need it back again, the stops aren't going to change. So those stops, they can go back and they always can ride the bus. We just need a notice of a day. That same holds true, just to expand upon that. If, the choice is really up to parents and their level of comfort with whether it's remote learning or it's live instruction in school, just because we're asking you to make a selection now, it does not mean that selection is indefinite. I mean, if you turned and you came in for 2 days and then said, I really want remote learning, then it's fine to switch. If you started remote learning and 2 days later you said, I really like to be live, you're able to do that. Part of that is that we're grouping students at the secondary level for our hybrid model. We're grouping them in classes as we normally would do if they were all here. And the students are entering those classes either virtually 1 week and live the other week. So if students choose to come to school or opt for remote, they're still in that same class with that same teacher, with the same students. So the movement within their schedule is not there. There's greater continuity with, they get a schedule, it's their schedule, it's just how they're coming into the classroom, either remotely or live.
So consistency and continuity actually is obviously very important in education, but we're forced into a situation where we have to remain as fluid as possible because of the changing conditions or changing parental situations or homes. We have another transportation question from Jamie Albright. I believe I asked her, and I can't recall, I believe it's an elementary school, but I don't have it written down in front of me. Just wondering what the plan is for the overabundance of people that will be dropping off and picking up their children from school. Understanding that if we go back full time, this will be a lengthy process, including the buses. And it was mentioned before that there will not be a staggered drop-off procedure. Has anybody ever considered the traffic situation that exists at times like open house or other school functions if we have everybody being dropped off?
So we've talked about it, we're aware of it. We'll be working with each building principal to devise a pattern that makes sense for their building. Every building's a little different in the drop off. But I think what's important to note is The parameters that we've had for arrival and dismissal will definitely change. The whole students in the gymnasium being called out, or if you're talking about the middle school, all students exiting, or the high school at once. That'll change. Entrance into the building will change, and departure out of the building will change. So I think that the main thing is be looking for some differences, and that social distancing piece will be something that's paramount. So we will be looking to do both in a manner that supports social distancing, supports students staying in their cohorts, allowing them to get their buses.
Next question is from Julie Arcilla. And actually, it's kind of a repeated question, but first of all, Eileen, she wants to thank you for graduation. I wanted to make sure I read this part. My son and his class finally got to enjoy his high school graduation. The fireworks were a memorable way to end the evening. She said she has a student at McGee and BHS. With the rise of corona cases in children, especially teens, is the board consulting with pediatricians in treating our children in Berlin to monitor cases?
It's not that we're consulting with pediatricians, but as far as the monitoring, one of the updates in the plan is there's an addendum, addendum 5, that was, this is one reason why we waited on, released on Friday from the State Department of Education. That addendum talks about how things would be treated case by case in the school. And before I was saying the consultation with the Central Connecticut Health District and the director, Charles Brown, that'll still take place, but it gives some guidance about if there was one student who was infected and you were in a class with the student, it sets some standards of practice in place. And that went out to all districts, and that's the state guidance on it.
So obviously at the elementary school, we're relying on cohorts as a major mitigating factor because this next question involves cohorts. That's why I'm asking. Jennifer Sawyer, who has 3rd grade twins. I'm not sure which elementary school, but I think the administrators probably know her. This question may have been addressed previously, but I missed it. Will my twins, who are in 3rd grade, who are normally split up under normal circumstances, be in the same class and cohort this year?
The answer to that is we would most likely cohort them, unless you contact us and said there's some reason not to cohort them. The intent is to keep families together because they're already a cohort, rather than now have that family in 2 cohorts. So the answer to that is yes, unless there's a reason why they shouldn't be together. And if you feel that way, please reach out to the building principal and discuss it with him or her.
Thank you. Next question is actually geared toward McGee and Sal. So I don't know whether Brian can answer it or whether you want to be a part of it, Sal. From Nancy Barbgallo. Thank you for having an in-person school tour for the transition kids. And I know we've talked about that. But I'm wondering why you're not including the parents for the visit. I understand that you'd like to limit the amount of students to adhere to social distancing and keeping everyone safe, but you can have 5 kids and 5 parents for the visit and just add a few days or extend the times. 5th grade to 6th grade is a big step, and my kids have never been in the school, and I have never been in the school, and there's no reason that you can't safely allow first-time parents to visit the school with their children. If it's safe to come back August 31st, it should be safe to allow parents to attend the tour.
Sure. So I can answer that. We have 2 3-hour slots blocked for this Thursday and this Friday. We had planned to have 10 students sign up for 20-minute tours of the school. We had a set of objectives that we felt we could, really from the student perspective, which we published as I can make my way from the bus or drop-off area through the correct door and to my assigned team on the first day of school, and also I can take home and practice opening a padlock. So we thought that with 6 feet in between, 10 students at a time, we have 1 tour guide, you're going to have 60 feet of space. Understand if you add people, that might increase to 120 feet of space. However, if somebody's side by side, it would be 60 feet of space. If we invited parents, you're looking at, we're going to hopefully have 200 students. Inviting other people, that might push it to 400 people coming through the building. It might also increase it to 600 people coming through the building in 6 hours. Also, we were sort of looking at the summer programming that was put out by Governor Lamont on June 1st, which I know we just finished summer school, but as far as summer school goes, folks that were not involved in summer school were actually prohibited from entering the building. Those that did, we had a nurse take their temperature and we kept track of them. With all of that being said, I did take a call today, and if parents feel like they really need to be there, with their students, they can then call and we'll set up either a small private tour, but we'll do the best we can. Like I said, we have 6 hours allotted for that. If we have to put a little bit more time in, we'll do that. But we're going to continue to have, 10 students. And then if we get a set of parents, say 5, we can have 5 students and 5 parents. That would be 10. We want to keep it as small as possible.
Thank you very much. Sounds like a good solution. I'm glad that people are reaching out to you with questions, and thank you for arranging something. Those transition years are very difficult. In normal circumstances, they can present their own challenges. So not having all these tours and questions, I get completely the nervousness and the stress at home right now. Next question is from Patricia Yagmin, I believe is how I pronounce her name. She's got a few questions. She's talking about the poll that you took, the initial one for the parents. She's wondering what percentage of the town residents responded to the poll that was sent out regarding opening. What kind of a percentage of feedback did we get?
We had roughly 66% or so respond to the survey. Within that 66%, we offered unsure at this time. So we did have a number of parents that entered unsure. And we had a minimal amount of parents that directly said, I'm not comfortable sending my child to school. We really believe that the next survey that we send out on Tuesday with the actual plan on how we're going to open, that survey will not offer the unsure. As I said earlier, we're asking that you would either select yes or no at this time, knowing that you can change your mind at any time. But that's the only way we can plan for appropriately staffing and readying the classrooms.
And her follow-up questions are actually connected to what you just said, so they're probably going to be very quick. So what percentage did we say of those people who responded were 100% comfortable with sending their children back full-time?
There was a large percentage. I don't have the exact number in front of me here, but there was a large percentage. There was a minimal percentage that was saying not to enter school.
Yeah, here you go.
So the yes, 69% were yes. And the high school broken out by school, very similar, 72. So for a district, it was 69.
So more than 2/3 of the parents at this point, based on the information they had, are comfortable sending their kids back. And you're going to be giving them a final survey tomorrow that's going to go out.
Yeah, the final survey will not have the unsure portion. It'll
Right.
just be either you intend to send your child back to school, in school, or you're choosing remote learning.
So actually, the reason I said that's her follow-up question. I just wanted to make sure we were answering that. What date can we expect to see the final decision on what type of program will be implemented? Well, we're hearing it now. It's a hybrid for the middle and high school, and it's full-time, in person for elementary, unless parents opt out. And so they'll be getting this information tomorrow, I believe. Parents will be getting the information along with the survey. How about what is the deadline for parents to decide which one? Are we giving it kind of a deadline?
We need parents to select by the end of the week. Obviously, knowing that up until the day before school starts, you could change your mind. You actually can change your mind one day after they've been in school, whether they're remote or in school. But we do need to know your thoughts. Once you heard the plan this evening, you get an opportunity tomorrow. You'll have the updated plan emailed to you to select what you're thinking at this time.
Thank you. I'm a little confused about the next question. It makes me think that she missed your initial survey or the email that went out. Anitra Mayo, excuse me, says, I'm curious why Berlin never sent out a survey to see what school model, well, actually, not about returning or not returning. She wants to know why we didn't survey the parents to find out which school model the parents would prefer.
Because up until last Monday, the directive from the governor was that we had to go into live teaching. So there wasn't a choice. The choice right now, having full distance learning as we were last year, is something that the educational commissioner of education and the governor are telling districts that they really don't want them in, but they are leaving it up to the district. And I think the bigger point here is that we're saying to parents, you have a choice. So you have a choice of where your comfort is, whether you choose the live instruction daily and you're comfortable with, given your situation of your child being in school, or you're opting for the remote learning, which is the distance learning, but much different than what we had last year as far as oversight and accountability, as I stressed last board meeting.
Thank you. This next question is from Kimberly Kjellin. Can Berlin move to a hybrid model? So I'm going to guess, and I don't know for sure which school her kids go to. I'm thinking it's another elementary hybrid question because we are going to a hybrid model for the middle and the high school, at least to start the school year. Can Berlin move to a hybrid model at least to start the school year, maybe for a month or 2 or 3? The model proposed as a possibility by the board previously would reduce the number of students in school at once and hopefully reduce class and cohort sizes to about 12. This would greatly help contain any COVID outbreaks and make parents feel safer about sending their children to school. We've kind of answered why we chose not to go a hybrid model from the elementary. I don't know if you have anything else to add to that.
No, I think that the cohorting at the elementary and where we are, and I'll share with you, and addendum 4 from the State Department of Ed talks about low, moderate, high, looking at where we are with cases and new cases. Given where we are today, and hopefully that maintains, are very favorable in Berlin and in the state, which really based on the state model, we could be, live instruction across the board and not a hybrid even at the secondary based on the modeling that's here. So given that, we think the cohorting at the elementary will provide, in addition to the cohorting, also the safety provisions that have been put in place by the administration, additional custodians and cleaning, the masks, the desk dividers, that we have a plan in place that will provide a safe learning environment for students and for staff.
Next question is from Becky Souza, who is a parent of a Hubbard child. And she really is asking for very specific things about Hubbard. So I don't know if it's an overall elementary question or Hubbard, but wanting to know, well, she's asking about what model Berlin schools are using. We now have answered that question. I also want to know what her individual school is planning to do. So Hubbard, and how classrooms will be set up. Will there be partitions between desks and seats? How many children will be in a classroom at a time? So I guess we're looking for a sense of what will a classroom look like? Do we have plans to be able to share that information with parents?
Yes, our hope is to have a video of what the classrooms look like that we then would put out. What we are waiting for the desk partitions to come in, as well as the desks actually at the elementary. We purchased over 250 desks to come in so we can set the classrooms up appropriately. But students will be given 2 masks, as we said last meeting. They'll also have what I call a desk partition, but it's a barrier in front and on the sides that each desk will have. The teacher will have a mask and a shield if they like. So that's setting up, and we will separate the desks to the greatest degree that we can within the classroom. We anticipate class size being as few as 14 and maybe a maximum of 22 at the elementary level.
And for a class of 22, we have enough room in that classroom to be able to safely space them out.
We have enough room to space them out, not at 6 feet, but to space them out with a mask where it's acceptable by the state model. Yes.
Okay. She also asked a question about pedagogy, actually. How are teachers going to be able to manage individual questions when students are having trouble reading or doing their math work? In other words, are they going to allow kids to approach the desk, or are they teachers free to go to the kids' desks to answer questions?
Teachers will have a mask as well as a shield if they choose to. We did have summer school where students did get their questions answered, and teachers definitely interacted with the students at that level. So I don't think we should think that teachers are going to stand just only at the front of the room and not interact with the students because they do have their appropriate PPE, the appropriate protection on. I think though that the mask and the shield are important for the teachers to have when interacting. Teachers will also be available to have a desk shield. It's called a sneeze guard. So if a student came up to the desk and had the mask on, they'd still be able to interact with the teacher and get their questions answered.
Thank you. Here's a different question. We haven't had this one, I don't believe. Certainly not tonight anyway. This is from Laura Sharma. She says, my question is, what would a typical school day look like for an elementary age student who is doing distance learning? Would there be a live teacher for some, most, or all of the day? Would they still be able to participate in specials such as music, art, and PE while they're at home?
So our intent is to have them still participate in music, art, and PE and their specials. How much they'll receive the special, our hope is to do it pretty comparable to what they receive in school if they were in school. That being said, our intent is to assign a teacher to those students receiving remote learning. So they would not be with the teacher and that is also teaching live. That teacher's exclusive responsibility would be remote learning. That will allow the teacher to interact with them live, via Zoom. Also to have them have individual meetings with students via Zoom because that teacher will be assigned solely to those students. We're not at a point where until we know the numbers, it may be an individual teacher, depending on numbers at each grade level. It may be a teacher that teaches first and second grade or third and fourth. We just need to know what the number of students that will be educated remotely, but it will be a certified teacher in that area teaching exclusively the students that are selecting remote learning.
Thank you. We have a question from Jennifer Favara. I believe we're in elementary again. I'm not positive on this one. Will there be additional cleaning and sanitizing being done in the buildings? And will students be responsible for helping in any way with the cleaning and sanitizing?
There'll definitely be additional sanitizing and cleaning in the building, especially the restrooms and the flat surfaces. We will be asking students before or after lunch to wipe down their desk. So this way that they know they're in a clean surface. Other than that, students will not be involved in the sanitizing of the building or any other portion, just their own personal learning space.
I believe that another follow-up question she had is, I believe you talked about the shields at the desks. Will all students have a shield all the time at their desks?
We've purchased enough shields for every student to have a shield at their desk all the time.
All right. This last piece of hers is actually, we haven't talked about it tonight, but we did the last time. But obviously, there are parents out there who didn't hear yet. Please explain how mask breaks will work. How often, how long, what's your plan?
So there will be scheduled mask breaks throughout the day, but there also will be a designated area that allows for at least 6 feet of social distancing where a student would be able to go for a mask break when they need it. Obviously, we can't just ask students to only take a mask break when we schedule it. They need to know if they need a break, there's a place they can go and be safe and then take the mask off. So teachers will set up the protocols for them, but in every classroom, we're asking there's a designated mask break area where the student can go and know that they're safe when they take the mask off.
So in essence, and I didn't read this part initially, but what she's wondering is, if we have a mask break, is the whole class taking a mask break at one time where you're going to have a whole classroom filled with kids who don't have their masks on?
We would never have them take a mask break where they're not appropriately socially distanced. So if you had students taking a mask break and there wasn't the 6 feet of distance that you would say that's required, you may have it staggered within your classroom where some students have a mask break, some don't. Or you would take the students outside or take them to the gymnasium or somewhere where they can distance themselves at 6 feet or greater and take the mask break. So as I said, it'll be scheduled mask breaks, but also the ability to take individual mask breaks when needed.
This is a different type of a question as well from Aaron Roach. My question is regarding music and theater arts in Berlin. At the last meeting, a question was posed about the possibility of having a spring musical. Many of us heard the response as a no. I think that those of us with children participating in the arts understand that there will not be a performance in the same scale as last year's musical, but we sincerely hope the arts are remaining part of the conversation, both logistically and when funding is being discussed. We've heard about plans for Berlin sports, and I'm truly happy for the athletes and families that their seasons are moving forward. I'd just like to know that music and performing arts has a seat at the table too.
We're not defunding the arts in any way. If we can put together a musical or some type of event that allows for the students to showcase their talents in the arts in a safe manner, we definitely will do so. But I think, where we're looking at things with the arts, doing something large scale as last meeting as a musical, when you think about what's going on at Broadway and right now, it's not at the level where sports are. Whether it should be or not, I'm not going to debate that, but by no way are we going to not have the arts. If we can do something and it's safe, we will definitely look to do that. So I don't want anyone to think we're just saying, oh, the arts are not going to take place. We just got to be cognizant of what we can do, given the safety that needs to take place for the arts.
I know that part of the state plan that discussed the arts, the initial one that came out, talked about maybe restructuring how we look at chorus, how we look at band, how we do things, not to get rid of things necessarily, but to look for new ways of being able to still say yes.
Right. I think, we're looking right now at the high school band camp and still making that happen. So I don't want anyone to be misled that we're not going to support the arts and try to do what we can. But I just think, when a musical came up, to do this, as Aaron said, to do a musical of the magnitude that we had before would be very difficult and to keep, safe guidelines.
And she does mention in here, by the way, that we know it won't be the same, but you have the most amazing music department here in town. They are creative, caring, and can certainly think outside the box, and that's what artists do. So we will continue to support that to the best of our ability.
Absolutely.
All right, one question left. It's a short one. And actually, I don't think we've answered this one yet either. This is from Gina Antonacci. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Now that I've decided to have my children remote learn, distance learning, what steps do I need to take to make sure that they are enrolled appropriately with the school?
So all that would have to take place on the survey is to complete the survey for both of your children. We ask that you complete the survey for the number of children that you have in the district, and then make the selection. Once you do that, we will then enroll them in remote learning. We're assuming that if you do not complete the survey, then we're assuming that you're coming for live instruction. So we're asking you to complete the survey anyways, but anyone that doesn't, as before in the survey, we didn't have 100%. We'll consider it live instruction until we hear differently from you.
All right, that's it for our audience of citizens, unless, of course, we have an audience member here. Yes, Ms. Richards, can you approach? There's a microphone right over here. If you can step right up here, please. John Richards is the Board of Finance Liaison for the Board of Education, which is why specifically he was invited to attend the meeting along with the administration.
Oh, yummy.
That must tasted real good, Toby.
Can we mute that, please?
That was right after.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is John Richards. I'm the Board of Ed Liaison to the Board of Finance. My address is 239 Hawthorne Drive. Thank you for letting me speak this evening. I've asked some questions and the others, and it seems like we haven't always hooked up. But some of the things that I will ask are related to where we're headed next, because that's just the way I am. I realize that this is a gargantuan effort to get a plane off the ground, and then I'm going to ask you how you're going to navigate it. But I did want to thank the Board of Ed and the administration for the informational sessions that were held the week of the 20th. I think that this district has been very proactive in trying to get the information out. I think it's reflected, Mr. Royan, in the quality of the questions that are being asked. I think that the parents are focusing on things that certainly they're concerned with, but are things that need to be considered. One of the things that concerned, if I can speak for the community, which is everybody non-Board of Ed and non-parent, the notion of what happened with the closure of the schools and the run to the end of the school year, which was chaotic at best. I think we thought it might be for a couple of weeks. Let's use some packets to try to entertain students, and we'll hope to get back together. We didn't get to do that. Then we tried to roll out distance learning. I think that the admission by the administration was that we wished we'd gotten further along, but there just wasn't a lot of time. And there were many things to try to overcome as we started to ramp up using devices at home, which we had never really anticipated. But my question would be, can you help us understand how this year's educational instructional options can allow for students to be promoted or to gain credit based on successful curriculum delivery? I think that you've answered part of this from when I wrote this down at the end of July. The notion of having cameras in the classrooms to allow for consistency of delivery of instruction. The teacher will know what they've delivered to those that were in front of them and to those that are watching at home. And the notion that the monitor may be such that you could respond to questions from home at the secondary level, I think is to be commended. But the concern is, as we looked at the delivery of instruction and thinking that we might be a little bit behind to start this year, how do we avoid that and make sure that as students progress, they are, as they move either from 4th grade to 5th grade or they proceed through the high school, that they're able to gather the credits that they need to garner for graduation?
So I think when you look at that, I talked about continuity of instruction. So when we look at it through elementary students, pre-K 5, being in school daily, or having a teacher designated, a specific teacher designated for those that are remotely, that would be in contact with them daily, not just posting assignments, not a model where it's 2 days in, 3 days out. I think that you're able to deliver the instruction at a much higher level than what we were able to do last year when we were totally distanced. As far as the secondary goes with the model of the cameras, students' instructional time will be the same. It's just that it's getting delivered at home for part of it and in class for the other. So I think that when you talk about will they be reaching the level of the curriculum as such and be ready for promotion to the next grade level, I think the likelihood of that happening in our current model, if we're able to maintain what's being proposed, is very, very high.
Thank you. I would say that the next part that I would say would be rhetorical from the standpoint that should the situation decline and we need to go to distance learning, we'll have to reevaluate where we head from there. But at least I think the notion of having the devices in students' hands and the ability to ensure that the instruction was delivered through the hybrid gives us a better chance for success for distance learning. One of the things we talked about this, that the State Department of Ed Commissioner turned the decision back to the local districts, and that's what you're dealing with now. One of the concerns that I have, and maybe I could suggest that we've talked about a relationship with the Central Connecticut Health District, and I believe you've used the name Charles Brown as a person of contact, but perhaps we could come up with a list of criteria that are being monitored so that we would know how we're faring as we go through the school year. I think that things like if the state's infection rate is increasing, they've talked about 5 days versus 14 days of decline. They've talked about a positivity of testing, but I think there's probably indicators that we could be watching to see if we're moving along well or not. And it may also involve the notion of what you discussed in Addendum 5. I haven't seen Addendum 5, but there are concerns, and we see them on TV all the time now, whether we see a student who took a picture of many of her colleagues in a Georgia hallway without masks moving about. We're not suggesting that that will happen here because we're enforcing masks, and we certainly don't have the positivity rate that exists in Georgia, but we do have the possibility, and maybe you can speak to this a little bit, about how will we test students and or staff, or how will that be communicated back so that everyone knows how we're moving through this as we get back together in the fall.
John, can I respond to that? Addendum 5, you said you haven't gotten a chance to see it yet. It just came out.
Yep.
It's in the packet that the parents are going to be getting tomorrow. It's an if-then. If this happens, then this happens. If this happens, and it's exactly what you're asking for.
Good.
The data's all there, the numbers there, and the procedures. The protocol is all spelled out very clearly.
Another aspect that I was thinking about was that this quote new normal unquote is something that we can define by saying what changes are being made for school for this fall that will be different from school in the past. The notion of wearing the mask is one thing. I think the cataloging of what types of instruction using the video and other forms are important, so that we all realize that while it would be best for the old model, which was we loved putting a teacher, and I can represent the old. I used to be on the Board of Ed many, many moons ago. The model hadn't changed much until recently, where our best model is to put a teacher in front of children to mold them and shape them for the future. Based on the safety considerations and what needs to be done, there are changes to that, and possibly I think that the plan has some of it, but I think we could arguably summarize them in a one-pager, even if it was by school, to say here's what we're doing this year, and parents need to be aware of it. It's almost the same as the parent who said, I haven't been to the middle school yet and is nervous about getting there. We've talked about a survey for parents. You haven't really spoken about the availability of staff, and maybe you will later in the meeting. The consideration is that if there are staff that are going to be working with the remote groups, arguably they may not be in the classroom, how well are they aligned by grade level In other words, do you have more at the high school, but your need for remote may be at the elementaries? I'm just curious about what discussions have been had in that regard in terms of use of certified staff.
So right now, we've sent a survey out to staff, asking any staff that did not intend to come back to school to teach live, to contact the Human Resource Department, to have a discussion about what their need is and what may be available for them for that need. When we look at the secondary level, John, because we're using the cameras and we're doing the hybrid A/B and students that are electing not to be in school to learn remotely, they're able to come into the classroom and be with that classroom teacher in a live format, not with posting assignments. There's not a need to say that there's going to be additional instructors needed for that, because the students that are receiving remote instruction are still in the classes. At the elementary level, we will be looking at, potentially, we're figuring, could be up as many as 6 teachers that we would need at each grade level. Those will be teachers that are certified in the grade levels. So they're going to be having certified teachers. And if we have teachers that have medical conditions that don't allow them to come back, and they're a first grade teacher, then we're going to assign that teacher to first grade who knows the curriculum and do the best we can. But regardless of what the need is, students will be given their instruction, will be given by certified teachers in that area.
Thank you. I'd be remiss if I didn't come before you and say that as a member of the town's Board of Finance, that we aren't curious as to what expenses there may be to roll out this new plan, how you're doing so far, and what you may need in the future, be it for continuation of the hybrid plan or considerations for the possible event of distance learning. Again, it may be something that you're planning to discuss later in the meeting, so I don't need a response now, but the notion would be that the Board of Ed returned funds to the town. The Board of Finance had asked that it be returned to the general fund. And we did say that if there was a need from the Board of Ed, that we would try to be responsive to that. So I'm here before you to say that that promise is still to be kept. We're just hoping for as much information as we can along the way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. I appreciate it. And the information you were just referring to has been shared with the chairman of the Board of Finance and also with the mayor. So that information is out there in terms of expenses that we've had already and what may come in the future. We don't know. We have to be able to turn on a dime, it looks like at this point. But we opened up the conversations already with that. So thank you. Before we leave this one section of the audience of citizens, I just wanted to, I'd be negligent if I didn't mention that Jamie Miller, one of our members, was trying very hard to participate virtually, but is unable to get her Wi-Fi to work, and she's away right now. But she did want to ask one simple question, and that is the hybrid model that we're looking at for the middle and high school. Are we breaking the kids alphabetically? Is it different at both levels?
So I could speak to it, and Mr. Urso and Mrs. Eustace can speak a little more detail. It will be broken alpha to some degree, but we're really looking at keeping class sizes consistent. So if we can keep the numbers where we can, so the classes are balanced. In some cases, we can't as much because it's based on the courses they're taking, especially at the high school. But I don't know if Mr. Urso or Ms. Eustace, you want to speak to, are you going with the alpha as much as possible?
I would say what you said is accurate.
So
In terms of it's mainly an alpha split, but there will be some exceptions to that.
I don't know that anybody can hear you.
I'll say, so
Okay.
Mr. Urso, is that the same with you too? I know you were debating it. Okay, so it is an alpha split to the greatest degree possible. Does not mean that an S might not get thrown in with B, because we're going to look at class sizes when you're breaking up the A and B. We're also looking for if a family if there's a student at the middle school and high school, and if we did have to go to a hybrid at the elementary at some point, if you're an A group, that whole family becomes an A group. If the family's a B group, the whole family becomes a B group. And the reason why is that those students would be home at the same time, which would allow the older siblings to be with the younger siblings, and also for the sake of cohorting, that they're in school at the same time. For that sake, I don't want to say it's a true alpha. It may be the first blush, and then there's some balancing that takes place. So,
Thank you very much. So now we're ready to move into the consent agenda.
Rich,
Yes,
if I
Tim.
may, before we move on. to
Sure.
that, one thing that you mentioned with the last audience citizens comment that I think is important. I think her opening statement was, now that I have made the decision to keep my student
Yes.
educating from home. And that kind of flew opposite to what you said, Brian, about the next survey coming out. I wonder if the parents who have already in the first pass said, I'm planning on keeping my kid at home, are just going to ignore the second survey, thinking they've already told us that they're not coming back.
Gotcha.
So rather than assuming they're coming back, maybe we need to take that group and already assume them not coming back.
Yeah, and because that group is smaller, we talked about actually reaching out to them to check, to make sure, to
Okay.
double check, because that came up. And we really wanted to double check with them to make sure it's still the case, because when they said they weren't coming, it wasn't a hybrid model, it was full live instruction. So it's a very good point.
Thank you.
You okay? Tim?
Yes.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you. The consent agenda. Do we have any deletions or amendments to the consent agenda as presented? Okay, so do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Do you have a question right here?
I have questions regarding the year-end final budget report. So I'm assuming this is going to go over to Mr. Kugno. But as I look at this, it reflects exactly as I know that the year ended with us returning $400,000 to the town, as reflected in the conversations that Mr. Richards just pointed out. But I'm looking at all of their expenditures lines, and I see the notation that there's $375,000 which we put into a non-lapsing account, and those things are identified as capital projects for 2 of the schools. But if I do the math, I see that we had budgeted $63,715. And this would have indicated a $6,600 overage. I just want to make sure that I see the math right, that in this particular budget line, we would have been $6,600 over. And everything else is as we discussed in the past. I mean, I think it's a simple, straightforward, just a kind of a yes or a no. I just want to make sure I'm looking at it right.
Well, first of all, I just make clear to
This one right
everybody,
here.
you're dealing with something that's going to come up later on the agenda,
Well, is this not in the consent agenda?
but it's okay, I can answer the question, but what you're speaking about is, okay. You're saying between the 62,186 and the 63,715?
Yeah, if I look at the 63,715 and I back out the 375 out of the 445, 325.02, the difference is $6,600. I just want to make sure that I understand. I'm splitting hairs here. I just want to make sure that
I'm not going to question your math. If you believe that that's what it comes out to be, I'll tell you when I go back to the office, we can go back over to it and make sure this coincides, but
because everything else is that we discussed. I was just surprised to see that in this particular place. But if you are saying that you're discussing this later, then I'll drop my question and we can
Yeah,
move
I
on.
think it's part of
We
the
can move
agenda
on.
later on, the final financial report, so it's not part of the actual consent agenda. So thank you. We'll address it a little bit later.
That's fine.
So then we did have a motion and we had it seconded. So all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Tracy?
By voting yes for.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So it passes unanimously. New business. Now, we've answered quite a few questions already, Brian, but if you have anything specific you'd like to address in terms of the district's readiness for the opening of school.
We have filled all staffing positions at this point for the 2021 school year, which is, want to commend the administration and the number of teachers who interviewed on committees to accomplish that. Very pleased with the new staff that's entering the district. That being the case, I just want to talk a little bit about the plan and what's changed. So you'll receive the plan tomorrow. There's really only a few sections that have changed. As I said earlier this evening, we changed our hybrid model. We did have a 2-day-a-week hybrid, with Wednesday being a virtual day. We've now, as I said, the hybrid model now for the secondary schools, 6 through 12. It'll be a weekly hybrid with A group and a B group, with students attending class either virtually or live daily during a specified time to receive live instruction. That instruction will be via a camera system that integrates with Zoom. Students will be required to be on the video at home, not just listening. They should be active participants. We're using that system this evening with Tracy Sisti is coming in virtually on the screen. So that's the major the major change in the plan, is that the middle school and high school will be in this hybrid. The elementary will be the same live instruction as I said earlier, and that what we were directed to do by the governor for the whole district. And as I said, really believe that the cohorting will allow us to have a safe learning environment for all students. The other parts of the plan, and John touched on it, and some of the questions this evening touched on it. There were addendums that were produced last week to the state plan, and those addendums really looked at. You talked about, well, how do you know which plan you should be at? And the addendum number 4 talks about low, moderate, and high levels of COVID outbreak. And those there, it doesn't tell you specifically what you should do as a district, but if you know that the levels, which we'll be receiving reports weekly from the state on that, is my understanding, if we know that the outbreaks are at a certain level, then that contact to the Central Connecticut Health District, and the conversation will then be, if we had an outbreak such at the elementary level and it was in one isolated class, it does not mean that the whole school shuts down for 2 weeks. It may only mean that those students receive remote instruction for those students in that class receive instruction for the next week. But those guidelines are outlined in the plan, and they're general guidelines, but at least gives you an understanding of what potentially could take place and where things are within the district. The other part of the plan we looked at, we talked administratively, how long do we stay in this model? If things go well, do we then look to have the middle school and high school go back to, full live instruction? So we will wait till we get to, 6 weeks in and then kind of evaluate where we are. It does not mean if things aren't in a positive direction, we could have to change things immediately. But if things are positive in 6 weeks, we may look to have live instruction across the entire district. But within that, I think it's important to note that parents have a choice. All of you have a choice. It's your level of comfort for your children. If you're not comfortable with the present model or having them in school, then I encourage you to opt for remote learning. And as I said, we will have certified teachers teaching the students remotely, and it will be much more robust than the distance learning, as the expectation would be that you're interacting with that teacher live daily, not just posting assignments and interacting on a limited basis. So what I'm asking you to do is to look at the plan. If you have questions, please email me. You're welcome to call. You may call the building principals. You may call the Board of Ed to speak to me. We'll get back to you. We'll get you the answers. If there's questions that, you need to have the answer so you can complete the survey by Friday, I definitely like you to reach out to us. And the other part is, if you choose remote or you choose live and you do change your mind at any point, it's not a problem. We're ready to accommodate you. There's not going to be a waiting period. We'll get you right back into the classroom. And so the continuum of learning is consistent for your child. So as I said, there's not a great deal of change within the plan. There's no addendums. And then one big change about the 6-12, the hybrid changing for that model. I don't know if there's any other questions.
I actually, based on what you just said, I just wanted to clarify.
Sure.
If I'm a parent and if I change my mind, who do I contact?
You would just contact the school.
Okay. The school administration,
School
school
administration.
counseling department.
You contact the school administration, contact the office, they'll get it to the right person. The counselors may not be in right away. If it's during the year at the middle school and high school, you could contact the counselor or administration and they'll make that adjustment. As I said, the middle school and high school, you're already in the class. So the only difference is you contact if you needed transportation, and you let them know that I'll now be coming to school for my group. And you'll be placed in a group, whether, A or B, whether you're remote or in the class. The difference is if you're totally remote, you're not A or B, you're both A and B out. So if you said you were coming back, they would look and say, okay, you're now going to be in group A or you're going to be in group B.
So I had one other comment about the document going home tomorrow, and then I'll open it up to any other questions or comments from the rest of the board. Whenever you get a document in the mail and it's 40 pages long, it can be kind of daunting, and you're trying to look at it and navigate your way through it as a parent. What does this exactly say that I need to know? I would highly recommend that everybody at home read page 2, which is Brian's letter, his introduction to the whole thing. It explains very clearly which of the pathways we are taking, which of the models we are utilizing at the different levels. Because when you flip through the actual document in the plan, we were required to give 3 different plans to the state, and all 3 plans are still in here because we may have to move at some point and pivot. So those plans are here. But if you look very carefully, it's the in-person every day at the elementary, and it is the hybrid at the middle and the high school. Those are the lines you want to really look at carefully. Plus also the addendums of addendum 4 and addendum 5, if you're looking for what happens if. Those are the kind of information that's in there as far as the health numbers and data. Does anybody else, including Lindsay, if anybody has any questions? Oh, she's taking a lot of notes. Do you have any questions? Not to put you on the spot right away in the first meeting. Does anybody else have questions or comments on the board about the plan that's going out? Adam.
My only comment is thank you. I mean, I know that there's been a lot going on with the administration. You know, we're talking about graduations with the high school. I was involved with the middle school promotion ceremony. Everything that's going on now, and even with our new AD trying to figure out what our school sports seasons are going to look like. This is so unique, and I don't think it's anything that anybody ever signed up to do. But I appreciate everything that everyone has done, because I think that in speaking with some of our friends and colleagues in other towns and talking to some other teachers in other districts, that they still have no idea what's going to happen. And every time I talk to somebody, I get the feeling that we are a step ahead. And whether that was back in March and April when we started the distance learning, we're now putting the plan together to the state and now coming up with a hybrid model. It made me proud to be a part of Berlin and everything that you've done. And you know, that goes from Brian and Aaron, all the principals and assistant principals and staff going all the way down, because this is not an easy situation. And I guarantee whatever plan anybody comes up with is not going to satisfy 100% of the people. But we are trying to operate under very unique times. And I have to say that I'm extremely impressed with the amount of work that's been done on top of everything else, on top of, as I just said, a graduation even without power for a period of the week. I mean, locusts are next. We know it's just going to continue over the course of the balance of the year. But you know, thank you. I think that what you've presented now, you're giving people an opportunity to feel safe in whatever decision they make, and have the flexibility to change if they decide to do so during the course of the year. So I think it's a great job done by all.
Thank you, Adam. You know, Adam, you mentioned sports, and I don't, if I'm not mistaken, Brian, there's nothing about athletics in this plan. This is just the academic piece. Is there a plan to send home anything to parents, or have they already been notified of the changes in athletics or extracurricular activities?
So one of the questions that parents asked, and we have a Q&A that was posted and sent home to you. The Q&A went through last week of questions that were asked that maybe help. We tried to break them up so you know, with colors, so you can they're kind of grouped by similarity. But one of the questions was, so if I'm in a hybrid model and I'm in group A, but I'm participating in volleyball, and during group B, when I'm not in school, do I still attend practice? The answer is yes. If it's not just for athletics, it's for all co-curricular. You are able to come to school after school for your co-curricular event if you're in a hybrid and it's not your week to be live instruction. So I know that was a question that was asked by parents. And part of that is it's really district by district. You'll find some districts saying that's not the case. The legality behind it is that, you know, as long as parents are notified, we can opt for either. Our thought is that you're on a team or you're at a club that you need to be part of that co-curricular. So we're going to allow that.
So correct me if you've already answered this, please. What about people that opt for distance learning full time? Are they going to be allowed to participate in the same activity?
The distance learning, as you said in the plan, it will state that if you opt for total remote then you could be limited, and we're limiting that. If you're totally remote and you're not in the building for instruction, then we're not going to have you in for the co-curricular.
Okay. Are there other questions, comments? I don't want to monopolize the conversation. I'm sorry.
I just have I guess, a comment, and then I actually have a question for Lindsay. So I want to echo what Adam said. I congratulate Brian, you and the entire team that's sitting in front of me. I think that you guys have I know that you guys put in hours and hours of thought putting this plan together. But in conversations with individuals and with Brian and with Rich, it also seems as if you've tried to come up with every what if as it comes along, putting it into the plan. And considering how this is consistently changing, I really give you guys kudos for being able to plan that way, because it changes all the time. In fact, as I look at this, I see that this says reopening plan fall 2020 draft version 3. If I'm not mistaken, version 1 had to be provided to the state on July 24th. Here we are only, 16 days later, and we're at a third version. That's how quickly things are changing for us to adjust. So I want to echo that exact same thing that Adam was saying is I'm talking to other people that I know that are in different school districts, and they are not nearly as far along as you guys are. So congratulations. And I know that it's really taken a lot of your summer to plan for all this, and it's crazy times, but hopefully we won't have to deal with this forever soon. Lindsay, week on, week off, thoughts as a student?
Yeah, as a student, I think the majority of the students, at least high school, we just want to be back. And if this is the way that has to be, then that's what it's going to be. We want to be back safely, and this is safe for us right now. So
Great.
I think that's a great point right now. And
Thank
our
you.
hope is that that's not the case. So we get to that 6-week window. If we're in a positive direction, then, we'll go back to allow, both groups being in. I know some districts are looking at a 2-week window, and that 2-week window of 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, we really thought was too long. But the reason to look at that is the quarantine time. And so, but even at the 1 week, we're looking at essentially the weekend 9 days. So that's having the continuity of just each group and the smaller classes. And it's really especially the high school. When we look at the high school classroom size, when you have 25, 26 students, and the classrooms can be very tight. I don't know if you agree with me on that. So, cutting that in half allows us for better distancing. So it's important.
Okay, actually, I want to ask you a follow-up on that. What was your biggest challenge? Now, you're going to be a junior this coming year, correct? What was your biggest challenge in the spring with the distance learning, the remote learning?
I think just the transition, really. I know something that was a concern with us was anything that, like any updates or news, went to the parents first. And for high school students and maybe even middle school students, I wanted to know that. So just the transition of having my mom or dad having to tell us when to log on and everything, but then we still have the expectation of having the responsibility of logging on and taking care of it yourself. So it's just like a learning curve, I think.
No, I think it's an excellent point.
I think everyone kind of experienced that because we've never done this before,
Yep.
but just the transition, really.
Thank you. I think that's an excellent point, communicating directly with the students in addition to the parents to let them know. Very good. Thank you. Anybody else with comments, questions? Are we good? All right. So now we're going to move on to, so again, thank you. I don't mean to just continue to echo, but I think I've said this all along. We were very prepared, better than most districts in the spring. And I like how prepared we are now. And I know how much time it took to create this. So thank you very much to everybody involved. Facility related updates. Mr. Cugno.
Yes, I've got a few things. Jeff Cugno, Director of Business Operations. I've got a few things to note. I'll go through them quickly, but I think it's a good update given all the things that are going on right now, including a lot of the things we talked about have to do with facilities. A few things you've spoke about before. We've completed most of the work at the McGee gym. If you will get a chance at some point to go in there, hopefully. I know they're not having tours at the moment, at least for us, but the gym's just tremendous. It looks fabulous. We put not only good money into it, but we put a lot of time into it. Nice job by the contractor and by the facilities folks. Our library media center at McGee has been refurnished also, along with a new rug. And also all the gym floors, by the way, in all the schools, which we do every year, have been now had their annual refinish. That's being done. I'm sure you know, with COVID and the things that we've talked about here, we've invested money in studio level cameras. Those are now being assembled. Not the cameras themselves, but the actual stanchions that they're going to be on, and they're going to be in all our schools in the classrooms in the middle school and in the high school. It's quite a project. Custodians are doing a great job in putting all those together, and the IT department is doing a great job getting everything set for school. As you all know, on the board here, we are set up now to do, given our contribution to the 2% account, we should be looking for the town to go forward with a rooftop unit at McGee, and also a Hubbard fire safety system over at Hubbard. I think we should all be pleased about that. That's all accepted and getting ready to be planned. I will say that during this time and getting ready to go back to school, a lot of the regulations we've been working under have to do with looking at facilities in a number of ways. One of them is the cleaning, which we spoke about, also is the ventilation. I will tell you that the facilities department from the town, along with our custodians, is doing a great job in going through all the schools, checking on things like unit ventilators, checking on filters, seeing whether windows open, can they be opened, can they be closed, does it make sense for that type of fresh air ventilation. Bottle fillers are being put in instead of fountains. There's some plumbing repairs that have been done. All these things are brought on by what we'd like to have is the cleanest air we possibly can and the freshest air coming through the schools, both at the middle school and the high school and our older schools, the grammar school, when the kids come back. So that's being done by your facilities guys right now. They're close to being completed. The closeouts that you approved for both vestibules and for security grant are going forward with the state. Now, everything hasn't been filed yet or accepted, but we are moving forward administratively. And lastly, the statement of need that the board approved, I believe at its last meeting, has been reviewed by the town council, accepted by it, and passed on to the Public Building Commission. So we expect that would start to be planned and move forward to get our grammar schools, HVAC systems planned, designed, and then over the next probably 3 years, renovated. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you. Staffing update, I believe you actually, the question, I'm sorry.
Jeff, it may be too early for this question, but the study that we have relative to our whole buildings, where does that, just quick, really where that stands?
That's a good point. I did leave that out. The study is generally completed, and we got a summary, an executive summary, as they call it, before they actually put it together. It's got some interesting information in there. Doug and I, Doug Solik, the facilities director for the town, we have gone over the substance of it. We have some questions. We have some concerns. It's a good study. It's very in-depth. We'd like to see some additional information in the report before it comes out.
Great. Looking forward to that. Thank you for that.
Yep.
All set? Good? All right, thank you. Over to Brian for a staffing update.
I know I spoke earlier about the certified staff, all positions being filled at this time, but I just want to share a little bit about the additional staff that we're moving forward with, and there's posting that now to address some of the needs because of COVID and what it will take for safety precautions. So we are hiring 5 part-time custodians and 1 full-time custodian. We've hired 2 paraprofessionals at this time, additional paraprofessionals to assist based on scheduling needs at the buildings. We're hiring 2 new security staff members. Those were approved on the town side of the budget, but we waited till now to hire in anticipation to ensure we were going back. And the latest notice is that I received a letter from the chief that he will be taking the SRO out of McGee Middle School for the 2021 school year. And we will be filling that with security staff at McGee. The high school SRO, if there is a need at the middle school, will cover the high school and the middle school. And that's something that the SRO is funded through the police department. It's not something through the Board of Education. And the police chief felt that with additional security staff in place, that the McGee could be covered with the SRO at the high school if needed. So we may need additional staff, as I said, for those teaching positions at the elementary, depending on the number of students receiving remote learning. We could have to hire some additional elementary staff.
Thank you. I just, I don't know, maybe the tech people can help me a little bit here. I've just gotten several emails from parents saying that the link was not working correct for this meeting, that they're getting error messages, that they're unable to join the meeting invite, permission denied. I don't know if that's anything that we can address here before the meeting concludes, although we have gone through quite a bit of it already. I didn't realize that. I normally don't look at my email, but I saw a bunch of them coming in during this. I don't know if we can just check on that, please. Certainly the meeting will be recorded and they can view it, which, and I apologize if people weren't able to get on live, but it will be recorded. How long before the meeting normally be put up on YouTube? I think in this case, if we have that ability, that would be very helpful for the people that weren't able to log in and watch it live. Thank you. I appreciate the speed there. Go ahead.
Can I ask about the SRO?
Sure, please do.
So the SRO is coming out of McGee. The police chief has
Sent me a letter stating
sent a
that.
letter saying he's pulling it out because he feels that the high school SRO can cover the middle school because we are putting additional security in there. The 2 new security staff that are being added on, were those added on for McGee?
No, the additional staff were to have a security staff member at each of the schools. In addition to at the high school, we were to have 3 security staff. So either we'll have the security director right now is housed, John Schmaltz is housed at McGee. So we will have John at McGee. And if John's not at McGee, we'll be filling it with a security staff member when John's not there.
All right, so let me just to straighten out numbers for me is we have John as the director.
Yes.
And then are we going to have 5 security people or 4?
You're going to have, right now we have John, Todd, Fig. So you have 4 and you have Mike. So right now we have 5, including John.
Including John.
So you're gonna have 7.
So we're gonna have a total of 7.
One of them is not armed. He was the night security here who's been on for years. So it'll be 7.
But he makes the 7th.
He makes the 7th. Yes, he does.
So we have 1 at each school, 1 additional armed that's going to be assigned someplace, and a 7th that's unarmed. Is that correct?
Yes.
Mr. Urso, do you agree that the SRO is not needed at the middle school?
You gotta come up to the mic, Sal, please.
And then I'll add to my question is, do you agree that the SRO is not needed at the middle
Yeah,
school?
so, I mean,
And the
Go ahead.
assigned security person will be enough for you?
So currently, we do not have an assigned security person. I never would agree that losing a staff member that's been part of the school and has been able to have the skills of a trained police officer, whether it be a student unfortunately gets injured, breaks a leg, they're right there right away. I think we do have some students who have connected very well with a uniformed officer in the building. We have used our school resource officer to help us out in some cases where we needed small groups, direct traffic, be part of the community for dances at night. So I would never, agree with wanting to lose a staff member that's been around and knows the building, or even train somebody new to come into our building. So I can't say, I can only tell you that the security officers that we've had in the schools who are former police officers, of course, it's taken a little bit of time for them to get acclimated and to get to know the students, which they're very willing to do. I think unfortunately, during the pandemic, we asked them to do anything, whether it was, wait outside in the hot sun, be outside in the cold, deliver, connect with parents and students. So I can't say until we get somebody else. The only thing I could say is, police officers are trained on a consistent basis right now for their jobs. Security officers are certainly, we would hire somebody that is a former police officer. I'm not sure of their training, but it's a tough question to answer because we never want to lose somebody who's supportive of our students and community and staff.
Yeah, so, I mean, my concern is that the SRO is going to be out of the middle school. We know that the middle school is a very important transitional year, and that support, you know, those years are right. Nobody wants to be a middle school teacher.
I have 100 that'll tell you they want to be middle school teachers,
Yeah.
but that's all.
And it could be difficult. So when you pull the SRO out of there, that's one person that's a known entity in your community, particularly for the 7th and 8th graders who have already gotten to know him. I'm guessing that with a trained security person coming in with, you know, under John Smoltz and the training that they get along, we would be able to transition a lot of that same community build into this person. It's just an unknown. So it's my initial reaction to, oh my God, they're taking the SRO. Why would they do that? And how come it's just a Mr. Benigni, we're telling you we're taking him out, versus an allowance of a transition, if you will, to do the same.
You know, look, we all know that, you know, the biggest difference is, you know, in student achievement or in a school is the relationship that students have amongst each other and between staff and students. And I very much considered Officer Dosky part of our community and somebody who, you know, fit right in. Not at first, because we all had to learn what a school resource officer did. Remember, we didn't really have one full time. So I am confident that if we do get somebody in the position and they can stay for a few years, that we'll be able to fill that need. But as you know, not every student has the same experience with whether it's male teacher, female teacher, in uniform, not in uniform. It's nice to have a police car outside. So, you know, it's hard for me to answer. If Officer Dosky goes, we certainly wish him the best, which I think the decision's already been made. If we are able to get a security officer that fills the same spot and can help us technically within the building, and eventually is somebody who can build relationships, I'm sure we can manage.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Go ahead.
Do you have, and you may not know the answer to this, but was there any indication, or was the indication that this decision was made as a consequence of us hiring?
No, I don't think it was a
security
consequence.
folks?
I think the message was that the number of officers that the chief has been operating under has been less than what's needed. And he really needs that officer on his rotation to meet the minimum standard that he needs to feel that he's securing the town. He said that, you know, if he needed an officer at any point, he would send someone immediately, but he just couldn't give up an officer there daily, is what he said. And designate just an officer of it. You know, he was supportive of it, but he also, I think the fact that we're getting the security, it allowed him to feel that there is someone there who is, you know, our security, or, you know, in order to be our security, you have to be a former police officer. So some of the same sets of skills and the training are in place.
Thank you.
One of my big concerns with this is, right, for years and years and years now, we've been talking about safety, 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 right? There's been tragedies in schools across the board. And now with the pandemic, now we're going from every door locked down except this one to come in to, we need alternate ways into the building, and how we're going to increase traffic flow and all of that. And now we're taking, you know, a security person out of the equation when we're looking at alternative ways for students to get into the building safely, as opposed to just one access point, which for years we worked on, how do we get it to one access point? Now we're talking multiple access points because of the virus. It's different. It's just from the timing point of view of where we are, it's difficult for me to kind of wrap my head around. So
Feels like the safety priorities have changed slightly, or realigned themselves slightly. Yeah.
Right.
Every district in the country trying to deal with this. No, you're not wrong.
Do you have any more staffing information, Brian?
No, that's all I have for staffing at this time. We just know that, you know, some of the staffing is contingent upon the outcome of the results of the survey.
Okay, thank you very
Both
much.
staff survey and the parent survey.
Last on the agenda,
final financial report, which we started to get into a little earlier. Jeff, did you have anything else you wanted to add about that?
Before
Yeah,
Jeff starts, Jeff, let me just apologize. You are 100% correct. I jumped the gun on what I was asking because the formats are the same. I was looking at the wrong one. I apologize. Too much too
I knew
soon.
your math was going to be correct on that. Anyways, this last thing that you see here has been asked. It's called the final budget report. It's really just a snapshot of financially what has happened between the time that we adopted our budget, or actually planned our budget really, and adopted our budget. The board understands that when you put a budget together, and remember this you're looking at here, this budget was actually proposed and projected back in January of 2019. So that's the first column. That's your general fund budget that was put together then with all the projections that we always do to figure out how we're going to spend a $44,000 or $45,000, $45 million budget in the right categories. The categories are on the left-hand side, which are the normal things by statute. What happens during the year, every year, sometimes more, sometimes less, we do adjustments. Your second column is the adjustments. And you can see in each one of these 11 columns, there have been adjustments, either pluses or minuses. All of those adjustments are what you folks approve on a monthly meeting when I come to you with your proposed budget adjustments. So this is an aggregate of what you proposed in adjustments over the last year, except for the final ones which you approved in mass in June, so we could balance accounts. Okay, so that's what these adjustments are here. And you can see, and I'll answer any questions, any of them that you can see that some of them are more, some of them are less. The third column is what our budget ended up being. So this is what we spent in our budget, the 44,997, and in what categories. So we will be using all this information naturally to propose our budget, to see what happens this year on our existing budget, and also to see what we're going to do for next year when you propose a budget. Last, in the fourth column here, what we've done is we put in what the percentage change is between what was originally approved and what was originally spent per line item, which is kind of a telling thing, see where you are. Some of them are very interesting. And last is just your cumulative expenditures, which is exactly the same thing as the revised budget. You will see at the end here, we have a savings surplus because we did not spend that $400,000. That was the $400,000 that we actually returned to the town. So I will do my best. Oh, the note, by the way, on the 375 on the bottom, which Matt was talking about before, the reason that that's there is under other expenditure, all other expenditures, you will see that there was a rather large adjustment of $381,000. What I'm telling you there, that $381,000 is the 375 that we.
That's what I was getting at. That's what I wanted.
Right. It's just, you're just two different things.
So the reality is we had 400,000 we gave to the town.
Yes.
But we also had 375. So
Exactly.
through the budget management and closing of the schools and transfer savings at the end of the year, we had really 775,000. 375. We've talked about this in the past, but I just want to make sure that as we're talking about this, 375 is going towards the two projects you've already referenced. And we gave $400,000 back to the town, which Mr. Richard referenced, that went back into the general fund.
And that's exactly what the report last month that you
Right.
folks approved
Right.
allowed.
So this is kind of the best format to have that discussion. Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions for Jeff? Questions, comments?
I don't have questions about the general operating fund. I would like to know where we are when we talk about the $900,000 of choice balance. I know that the last time we talked, about $100,000 of that was allocated to a summer school because we were running over. So I'm curious as to where we are with choice as it stands now.
So I can speak to that. And Jeff, if you want to echo on this, if add in any information here. So I know I mentioned last meeting that we spent over $1 million on preparing to reopen and some of the safety precautions, as well as the technology, as well as staffing to reopen the schools. The monies that we spent were the choice funds. We spent roughly $80,000 additional out of choice for summer school, which brought the balance down to 800,000. That 800,000 that we had in choice has been spent for PPE, the camera system, licensing, technology, staffing. We are now into this year's choice monies, which we have not received yet. We anticipate that we'll hit that 4% mark, which will allow us to receive a reimbursement, a rate of $8,000 per student. If for some reason we didn't, the monies for this year would be expended at this point. We have roughly a little under 300,000, and I know that's probably down, Jeff, based on the last 2 weeks here since we've had that number, but roughly $300,000 of this year's funds left.
This year's funds
Meaning 2021.
Anticipated
So in
choice funds.
addition to the $800,000 that we had left from last year.
We spent about another $300,000 this year's funds. Jeff, am I correct in what I'm saying here? Yes, we've been asked by the Board of Finance as well as with the F&O talking that the monies that we needed to spend would come from choice first. Typically, we keep those monies there for unanticipated outplacements, things in the budget that we no longer have that were in the budget years ago. But we were asked by the town to spend the money, and then if needed, that we would come and talk to the town if we need additional funds. My concern right now really is if we need additional staff for either to fill classrooms or to do the remote learning, whether it's virtual or in live teaching. That's the next, to see where we end up.
All right, thank you.
And I apologize because I know this is not on the agenda, but we've cracked the door on this. Of all the money that's been spent, do you have an idea of how much is reimbursable? And what is the process for receiving reimbursement? Is it through the town? Is it through the board?
So the governor announced that there's going to be federal money coming as well as additional state money. Some of the reimbursement money, we just filled out a reimbursement earlier this week, but it's really for items that we already purchased. So some of the Chromebooks and things that the state would be providing, we've already bought those Chromebooks. They're not reimbursable at this point because we already were prepared to do that. We did put some funding in for reimbursement. I took a survey today that went to the State Department asking, how many additional staff members and so on. I'm not sure if that will tie into some of the funding that's available. So the additional custodians, the additional funds for cleaning the buses, even the new additional teachers that we're anticipating, all those were put into a survey with the state. And my anticipation is they'll look at that and then send something out to talk about what's reimbursable at that point. Right now, we're receiving about $145,000 in reimbursement from the CARES Act. Of that, $15,000 will go to St. Paul's, and the rest will remain here in Berlin. That money is in addition to the choice money we have left. That'll go back into the budget. So, roughly $400,000 or so, $400,000 we have, and we believe right now we have the PPE necessary to open school. So, it just, if we need to replenish that, which I'm sure we will at some point, where is it coming from? And then the biggest concern is staffing. If we do need to hire additional instructional staff.
Brian, are the camera systems that we brought in for virtual, for distance learning and for hybrid method, can those fall into the reimbursement process?
Well, in the survey I completed today, we did put those in. They were not in the previous survey, so I don't know if they will fall in or not. And just, so to note the camera system, I just think it's important the board knows the camera system you're looking at with the monitor sitting on a stand like that is about $3,700. But that we've purchased enough for the middle school and high school for all the classrooms. So that takes care of it. I think when you think about it from the standpoint, it is an exorbitant amount of money, but what it would take to staff in the same way for teachers to be able to teach and plan one lesson and not have to do a virtual lesson as well as a live lesson. I think when we bought smart boards for the classroom, we probably were spending similar money for the classrooms for smart boards and projectors. And if you think about it, if school is 180 days, you're talking, if my math's right here, you're talking about $20 a day for each classroom to have a camera system like that. So I'm hoping it's beneficial. I know in speaking to the union president, speaking to some of the teachers, I think the encouraging thing is not sure they're thrilled about being on video all the time, but the encouraging thing is they can come to work, prepare their lessons, and interact with their students, whether they're virtually or in class, real time. And it's not like go back and send an email or just post something. So, and we've demoed it as a administrative council, and we're very impressed with the clarity and the sound and the picture. So we're very optimistic about the use of it.
I like the fact that it's not fixed, in the classroom. It could be moved around.
This is another question that's
Sure.
kind of a sidebar question,
Sure.
but just in terms of planning for families, I know that a lot of the equipment that was issued to students in the spring has remained with those students. So I assume that at the elementary level, there will be some communication about returning that at some point or having it come back with students. But
Yeah.
perhaps for the middle school and high school, they'll retain those.
So the middle school last year kept the devices in school. This
Oh,
year,
okay.
they'll be individualized towards each student, as we used to do in the past. Our concern, though, is knowing the students had them for so long that we know there's going to be some breakage and some
Sure,
replacement
exactly.
needed. So we did purchase some additional items knowing that. So there's going to have to be like a check-in point to check in that they have the device, and then if they need a different device and so on. Typically in ninth grade, we provide brand new Chromebooks to all ninth graders, and that'll be the same case. We're prepared to do that. And the hope is if we can get 4 years out of it, that's fantastic. At the end of 4 years, the value of the Chromebook is really, it's not much. And so 4 years with it. So.
Tim, did you have a
Yeah,
comment you wanted
just
to make?
something I wanted to just clarify for those who are watching and maybe haven't seen before on these camera systems. They are not recording, correct? This is a classroom tool that happens, and if you missed a class, you've missed
Right.
the lecture.
And
It's not.
part of this is, we're not going to be recording lessons. It's for live instruction. Administrators are not coming in on the camera to view teachers teaching because we're in a hybrid model. The ability to walk into the classroom is there. It's really a teaching tool, and we want it to be used as such. We will be asking parents and students to sign a privacy agreement that they will not record or use the video in any way, similar to the agreement they signed for technology in the district. I know that there are other districts that the camera system was thought about and not able to be implemented for those reasons. So I think it speaks to the relationship we have with the administrators have with the teachers union and the commitment that to the educating the students to the best that they can. And going back to that same thing I said earlier this evening, the continuity piece.
Anybody else? So I'll just summarize this from my perspective, and
I think that the preparation of this district speaks volumes to our decision-making, the quality of our leadership, whether it's at the building level or at the district level. The fact is that you asked about the open choice funds. The fact that we managed our money so successfully last year that we had that chunk of money, 900,000 or 820 after summer school, to be able to utilize, to be able to put this plan into action instead of having to go to the town or already say we're short setting up going forward. The one-to-one devices that we had even before we went into the spring for distance learning, and then the common learning platforms like Schoology, for example. The fact that we had all this stuff, not every district has these things in place. And including even neighboring districts. We were in a much better place in the spring than many of our surrounding districts. And I think we are again going into the fall. We were prepared because we had the money to be able to spend because we were wise in how we allocated. That's my perspective in any case.
Tim, you could probably speak to this more with your tech ability, but I know that, Craig, our IT director, shared connectivity, are we able to have connectivity in all the classrooms? And I guess we've upped it's called the pipe, but I don't know what kind of pipe it is, Tim, so maybe you can help me with that. But the pipe, we've upped it to a very high level. I don't know what it is exactly. I don't know, Mike, if do you know the rate? Do you know the rate of that we're receiving data?
For a normal connection would be fine, but we upped it up to 10 so that everyone would be able to stream simultaneously.
I don't know whether that's
Do you know
conveyed in
what
the
that means,
microphone or
Tim?
not.
10 out to every school?
Yeah.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Tim,
That's
I
a,
don't
that's
know
a
if you
lot of
wanna-
bandwidth.
I don't know if you want to repeat what he said, because
Mike,
I
can you
don't
come up
know
to the
without
microphone and say
I
it,
don't know if
please?
it was
Yeah, I
picked
mean,
up to the audience.
basically,
Yeah. So-
Mike, yeah, I can save you if you want. What he just said is we had a 1 gigabit pipe to the internet, which means 1,000 megabits. Somebody at home maybe has a 250 megabit connection from Comcast, let's say. This is 4 times that is where we were at a gigabit, and we've now bumped it up to 10 gigabits. So if you take 10 times 1,000 is 10,000 by my math. You divide that by 1,000 kids, and everybody's got a lot of bandwidth individually that they can be using it when they're working from home. You know, it's obviously when we're in that hybrid model and kids are in school, they're not using that bandwidth simultaneously. So we should have very low latency and low issues coming out of here, which is definitely a good thing.
So, and that's really a credit to the IT department, in doing that and recommending it. And also, looking at the end of the year monies and deciding how they should be spent. So,
Okay, well, I know the next piece says adjournment, but we are in need of an executive session, a brief executive session to discuss personnel. And I know that we need a motion to add right, Tim? To add the executive session onto our current agenda. So can I get a motion to add an executive session for personnel matters onto the agenda, please?
So I will move to add an item to the agenda to specifically an executive session to discuss a personnel matter.
I'll second that. Second, we have a second from Adam.
We have to invite somebody.
No, yeah, this is
the
just
next
a-
one.
this is
Yeah,
an
figure this
agenda
out. It's gonna
modification.
take me 9 months to figure this out.
invite Denise too.
Okay, so all those in favor of adding an item to the agenda?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Oh, we got an aye
Tracy's
from Tracy. Now we need a motion to go to executive session for a personnel matter to invite Brian and to invite Linda, you said as well, correct?
Denise.
Denise, I
Denise,
apologize.
okay.
Brian and Denise.
So I will move to go into executive session to discuss a personnel matter, inviting the superintendent, Brian Benigni, and the director of human resources, Denise Parsons.
Second.
We got a second from Matt. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. We will not be returning after this, as we'll be dismantling this, so we'll have to adjourn from there. But thank you, everybody. Appreciate the time.